Welcome to the RLH Project's podcast, Love Matters, where we talk about real academic research mixed with real-life experiences to hopefully improve the real relationships you have with important people in your life. I'm the founder of the RLH Project and the host of the Love Matters podcast, Dr. Jenny Rosier. I'm also an associate professor of communication studies at James Madison University, a wife to my favorite person on the planet, a mother of 4 young children, and an all-around love enthusiast. As an expert in romantic and parent-child relationships, I've dedicated my life to figuring out how individuals can use communication to live happy, healthy lives connected to other people. I hope that this podcast can help you. Hello, friends! This is the first season of the RLH Project's podcast, Love Matters. For season 1, I've decided to do an in-depth 12-episode explanation of a single concept that impacts us all, attachment. I actually teach a class at James Madison University in the School of Communication Studies called Attachment Communication, and much of this season's podcast is based on my lectures from that class. And so that's the plan for season 1 of the Love Matters podcast, an in-depth 12-episode explanation of the science of attachment with relevant stories from myself and a ton of cool people I know sprinkled throughout. Lucky for you, I'm not just offering a podcast to help you understand attachment. I've also created a 60-page digital workbook that you can purchase through the link in my Instagram bio at Relationships Love Happiness or on my website, www.relationshipslovehappiness.com. This digital workbook not only complements the podcast, but it also includes extra attachment tips and information not covered in the podcast, and includes self-reflection prompts throughout that will encourage you to dig deep and reflect on your own past and current life experiences. Before you start listening to this episode, get yourself a copy of the Attachment Matters digital workbook. You won't regret it. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. No matter what time it is, no matter where you are, I am so thankful that you're spending your time with me. Today, in episode 6, I'm going to talk about adult attachment. Specifically, this episode will give a general overview of adult attachment, and then the next 4 episodes will describe each adult attachment style in more depth. If you're following along in the Attachment Matters digital workbook, we're on chapter 6. The movie industry would lead us to believe that everyone has serious attachment issues. From the stage 5 clinger illustrated in the film Wedding Crashers, you know, the obsessive jealous woman who clings to a man and wants to move the relationship forward ASAP. She might say, "I love you," long before it's appropriate to do so, compliment and affirm her new beau to make him feel good. She might initiate sex early on. Maybe she showers him with gifts and acts of service. And subsequently, she digs her claws into him so that he has no choice but to stay. Hollywood paints a really ugly picture of this woman. What they don't tell you, though, is that she does all of this probably because she has internal working models that give her a low opinion of herself and a high opinion of others. She thinks she needs to move things along quickly before the other person realizes how awful she really is. Or what about the perfectly content lifelong bachelor? Think James Bond. He's confident, independent, and can be a bit of a player with the ladies, rarely involving himself in long-term relationships. He might say things like, "True love isn't real," or "I'm happy by myself." The lifelong bachelor has an internal working model that gives him a high opinion of himself and a low opinion of others, which is why he doesn't really desire a serious relationship. When he actually finds himself in a relationship, he doesn't openly express his feelings. He wants to take things slow, and he's usually not ready to commit as soon as his partners. In order to distance himself, he might focus on small imperfections of his mate, pull away when things are going well, check out mentally, or keep secrets. While these descriptions might sound like someone you know, individuals with these extreme attachment issues are less common than you think. Research actually shows that the majority of adults, about 60 to 70% of them, have a secure attachment style. Attachment style. What does that mean? How did we get here? The previous podcast episodes focused on attachment from birth all the way up to adulthood. So, what is attachment in adulthood? Well, as you probably guessed, it can seriously impact how we view, form, maintain, and even end romantic and platonic relationships with others. It impacts how we communicate, how well we handle stress, how well we make decisions, and how we trust other people. Attachment is really important. Let's do a really quick recap. So, babies experience distress and cry. Based on parent reactions to the infant crying, attachment foundations are developed. Attachment foundations are carried with individuals throughout their life, though they're not set in stone, and they impact relationship development forever. Adults use their romantic partners as attachment figures to downregulate their own stress. So before, when we talked about middle childhood and adolescence and said that those children might use a different parent as an attachment figure, or a teacher or a coach or even a friend as an attachment figure, when we get into adulthood, we still might use our parents as attachment figures. We might use our peers as attachment figures, but something that's new is that we start to use our romantic partners as attachment figures. Interestingly, adult attachment is measured based on the amount of attachment anxiety and the amount of attachment avoidance that a person experiences while they're in a relationship. Something that is really important to understand about these two concepts is that they are on a continuum. So, attachment anxiety is on a continuum. Some people have really, really low feelings of attachment anxiety when they're in a relationship, and other people have really, really high feelings of attachment anxiety. Most of us fall somewhere in the middle. It's a large continuum with a lot of variance. Same with attachment avoidance. Some people feel really, really low avoidance. Other people feel really, really high avoidance. But most of us fall somewhere in the middle. And again, it is a large continuum with a lot of variance. Attachment anxiety and attachment avoidance combine in different ways to create a person's adult attachment style. In adult attachment research, researchers typically identify 4 styles. The first thing I'm going to do is talk about how attachment avoidance and attachment anxiety combine to create each one of the 4 attachment styles. Then I'm going to further explain each adult attachment style in more depth. The first attachment style has low anxiety and low avoidance. This attachment style is called secure attachment. So this clearly is the most desirable, and in fact, research has shown that the majority of Americans actually do have a secure attachment style. The second attachment style has low avoidance and high anxiety. This is called anxious or anxious preoccupied attachment. A third attachment style has high avoidance and high anxiety. This is called a fearful or fearful avoidant attachment. And the fourth kind has low anxiety and high avoidance. This is known as dismissive or dismissive avoidant attachment. I think it's also important to note that while some researchers only identify or categorize people into 3 groups of attachment: secure, anxious, and avoidant, other researchers like myself tend to use 4 categorizations: secure, anxious, preoccupied, dismissive, and fearful avoidant. But both of these kinds of categorizations rely on measuring an adult's amount of attachment anxiety and amount of attachment avoidance. Interestingly, though, most people don't actually fit nicely into one of these 4 groups. Instead, a lot of people have a primary attachment style with some tendencies or behaviors from one or more of the other attachment styles. So maybe you are primarily secure, but you have some dismissive tendencies, especially when triggered. This could mean that in most situations with most people you feel secure, but sometimes or with certain relationship partners you might feel less secure. You might feel dismissive, if we're going with my example. So if you have dismissive tendencies, you might feel like you need more space sometimes or some more independence, or you might go as far as feeling like sometimes you don't even need a partner to be okay. I've had the pleasure of interviewing a good number of people over the last several weeks, and I've really enjoyed talking to them about their experiences with attachment anxiety and attachment avoidance in their own relationships. Here are a few of them talking about their own experiences. First up is Savannah, age 25. She's currently in a 3-year-long relationship that's been long distance for the past 2 years.
So I have a very positive outlook on relationships, just in general. My parents had a fantastic marriage, and they were together for over 25 years. And so I had a very, very positive example of what relationships should look like. And then growing up and coming into myself a little bit more, I think that there is a profound importance of just connecting with somebody and just that human connection. And so I'm sort of the mind that you don't need a relationship to be fulfilled, but they do enhance life a lot in a lot of different ways when they're done the right way.
Now let's listen to Susie, who's 24 years old and's been in a relationship for the past 9 months.
I can get very anxious if I haven't heard from the person in a long time, or I can get very if they're getting a little too clingy, then I kind of just get annoyed and kind of want nothing to do with it at that point. So I've definitely been a combination in the past. And I think that's because a lot of previous relationships have kind of left me feeling a little bit I guess, I don't know if abandonment is the right word, but kind of distrustful of people to that are not going to follow through on things.
Next is Bridgette, who's 24 and currently involved in a relationship for the past 2 years.
The relationship that I'm in currently is by far the best relationship I could have gotten myself into, and based off my past or kind of just in general, this one definitely feels a lot different. However, that's not without saying that there aren't issues that I have kind of just in my own head and needing to be able to verbalize that to him. So one that I had pretty early on in our relationship was, what is he actually thinking about me? What is he doing when I'm not there? I don't really know, because of past relationships that I had. There was rumors that I was told that I wholeheartedly believe that he was cheating on me. So it kind of led me to doubt and question this current relationship boyfriend that I have, who is 110% faithful and there for me and supportive. My past really affected how I was viewing my current status and the relationship that I was in, all because of rumors that I heard and and how a past boyfriend had treated me. So I was kind of conditioned to believe that no one was gonna be wholeheartedly true and faithful.
So, what does secure attachment actually look like? Well, as I said, people with secure attachments tend to experience low anxiety and low avoidance. Securely attached adults are typically comfortable with both intimacy and independence. They really enjoy sharing information about themselves and listening to their partners self-disclose. They have a goal in relationships of building intimacy. And so they understand that in order to build intimacy, they need to share things about themselves and they need to listen to their partner share things about themselves. But they also value their autonomy, their independence, and they respect the independence of their partners. Adults with secure attachment don't often worry about their partners judging them, accepting them, cheating on them, or abandoning them. They're confident in their self-worth and they feel secure in their relationships. They tend to have positive opinions of themselves and positive opinions of others. So this manifests into them thinking things like, I'm a good catch, I'm a really good romantic partner, people would be happy to be around me, right? I am lovable, if you remember from a few episodes ago. And their opinions of others are positive. So other people are great. I'm sure that I'll be able to find someone who I can connect with. Other people are good intentioned. While it's not always the case, many secure adults are also highly sociable. And they're thought to be able to hold a conversation with anyone. Sounds pretty great, huh? Well, we know up to this point that there are a lot of benefits to secure attachment, and this is one of them. When you're in a romantic relationship as an adult, you tend to trust other people, you tend to have healthy communication, you tend to understand boundaries, and you tend to have better relationships. What does anxious preoccupied attachment look like? Like I said, anxious preoccupied individuals tend to have high anxiety and low avoidance. They typically want intimacy, but sometimes they can become really dependent on others, or dare I say, clingy. Right? In the movies, the anxious preoccupied woman is always described as a stage 5 clinger. They tend to want relationships to move quickly, and they can become obsessive. And one of the reasons they become obsessive and they move relationships along a little quicker than the average person is because they typically have a low opinion of themselves and a high opinion of others. So the thoughts inside an anxious preoccupied person's head could be, I'm not that great, I'm not really worthy of a relationship, or as far as I'm a bad relationship partner, I always mess things up, and other people are really great, other people are awesome. I'm going to find one of those other people that's really great, and I'm going to move quickly in the relationship so that they don't find out how terrible I am until they're, already in love with me. So anxious, preoccupied people tend to do grandiose gestures or a lot of complimenting or affirmations with their partner. They kind of want to butter them up, if that makes sense. It's not manipulative. It's more of an anxiety response. So they're worried that if you get to know the real them, you won't like them. And so they want to, put on a bit of a show, be really happy and loving and compliment a lot so that you'll fall in love with them and you won't figure out how much they suck, how crappy they are, in their opinion, until later. So sometimes they're described as people who dig their claws in really quick. They put the relationship in the express lane. So you can't figure out what's happening until you've already paid. So they tend to be very comfortable sharing their emotions and might even overshare again in order to increase relational intimacy faster than what is normal. When they're actually in relationships, anxious adults might easily become jealous. They might make seemingly constant requests for a partner's help with something or for emotional comfort. They might excessively make requests for hugging or kissing or physical affection. They also have a really strong desire for approval from their partners, and they tend to really worry about their partners abandoning them, judging them, or accepting them. This can sometimes cause an anxious, preoccupied person to not say what they want to say or push down their feelings because they don't want to make their partner upset with them, right? So they might not be their true, genuine self, their authentic self. They often focus a lot of their energy on gaining approval from others, and this is sometimes at the expense of their own desires and values. Sometimes called the opposite of an anxious, preoccupied individual, this next attachment style, coined dismissive, has low anxiety and high avoidance. So an anxious, preoccupied person has high anxiety. A dismissive individual has low anxiety. An anxious, preoccupied individual has low avoidance, and a dismissive individual has high avoidance. So dismissive adults typically try to avoid getting too close to others when they're in romantic relationships. Sometimes they even avoid relationships altogether. You might hear a friend say, I don't need a man to be happy, or I'm single for life, bachelor forever. These kinds of things are things that a dismissive person might say. This doesn't mean that they never get in relationships, though. When they do get in a relationship, they tend to be a little more closed off. They are a little slower to build intimacy with a partner. And sometimes they might be described as putting up a brick wall, like an emotional brick wall, when they're in discussions with their mate. They crave independence and they might often want to do things alone, which can sometimes be a turnoff to their partner. Dismissive adults tend to have a high opinion of themselves and a low opinion of others. Sometimes this is the main reason why they are single or why they are not close to other people in relationships. Many times, a dismissive individual will create a set of standards that they believe a romantic partner should live up to. And lots of times, we all have sets of standards, but lots of times for a dismissive person, the standards might be excessive or out of reach, not realistic. There might be a really long list, and you might hear them say things like, oh, well, I've just never met anyone who can live up to my standards, and I don't believe that I should settle. This makes it difficult for them to get close to people. There's other dismissive individuals who might be in relationships frequently. So they might get in relationships, but at a certain point, a certain predetermined level of intimacy that they're beginning to be not comfortable with. So there's like a amount of intimacy that they're comfortable with. And once the relationship gets to a certain point, they might self-sabotage or ruin the relationship purposefully so that they can end it. They might do something like make the other person extremely uncomfortable to make the other person break up with them. Or they might just be doing the breaking up themselves. They might push their partner to the limits, or they might just say, sorry, I can't be with you anymore, if relationships get to a certain point. I've definitely known people who have some pretty strong dismissive tendencies, but tend to always be in a relationship. But the relationship only lasts 3 to 6 months, and then it ends for some crazy reason, to me, some crazy reason, and then they're back in another relationship a month or two later. 3 to 6 months into that relationship, they end it as again. When they actually get into relationships, dismissive adults many times will not openly express their feelings or emotions, and they might want to take things slow, and they might say things like they're not ready to commit as soon as their partners are ready. Sometimes you could hear a dismissive person cynically say something like, "True love isn't real," which could be one reason why they are reluctant to start a relationship. In order to distance themselves, so a lot of times a dismissive person is trying to distance themselves. Sometimes it's conscious, sometimes it's unconscious. But whenever they're trying to, they might focus on small imperfections, pull away when things aren't going well, check out mentally, avoid physical closeness, or keep secrets from a partner. Sometimes dismissive people might also not want to talk about serious topics, especially things having to do with the future or commitment. The last adult attachment style is known as fearful or fearful avoidant. These individuals experience high anxiety and high avoidance. Sometimes individuals who have fearful avoidant attachment or fearful avoidant tendencies feel a lot of dissonance or even confusion in their heads. They typically want intimacy, but they have a really hard time trusting others. So there's this push and pull constantly going on. They want to be close to someone, but they feel like they can't trust the person. They have a desire for intimacy and a fear of sharing emotions, and those things work against each other. It makes it very difficult to form relationships with other people. One of the reasons why they have this dissonance inside is because they tend to have really negative opinions of themselves and negative opinions of others. So I'm really not that great, but other people aren't really that great either. I might as well try to date someone, but they're going to figure out that I'm not that great pretty soon, but I guess they're not really that great either, so I guess we should just do it. It's a very back and forth kind of thought process. Fearful individuals are typically really hypersensitive to social approval, and they might avoid social situations because the fear of other people negatively judging them is really strong. When they actually get in relationships, fearful individuals might emotionally retreat like a dismissive person, especially during a difficult conversation. They tend to self-deprecate because they view themselves as unworthy, and they're really looking for their partner to reassure them. They might express jealousy due to their trust issues, experience separation anxiety, become consumed with a serious relationship partner, and they could very much worry constantly about getting hurt if they get too close. So it's this, again, back and forth. They want to get close, but they're terrified to get close. But it's a really good thing to do, but it's really scary at the same time. And it's just back and forth, back and forth. So have you figured out which attachment style you are yet? In the show notes of this episode, I will post a link to a free online survey. The cool thing about this survey is that not only will it tell you what your main or primary attachment style is, but it'll give you a really nice description of it. It'll also show you where your attachment tendencies are. So like I said earlier in this episode, most people don't tend to fit nicely in one of the 4 boxes. Lots of people have, for instance, anxious preoccupied attachment with some fearful avoidant tendencies, or fearful avoidant attachment with secure tendencies, something like that. We don't always fit nicely in one box. Interestingly, you can have secure attachment towards one group of people or towards one person, and have some insecure tendencies towards another person. So a great example of this is if you have secure attachment with a parent, most of your life. Let's say you have really secure attachment with your dad, and you grow up and you feel safe and secure whenever you're with your dad. Your dad helps you downregulate your stress. You feel like you can always go to him. You feel like he's always there for you. But then you start dating, and maybe you have a few negative romantic relationship experiences. While you likely started off your attachment outlook with romantic relationships in a secure way, like you had a secure outlook, those negative relationship experiences could definitely shake your attachment. But it doesn't likely shake your secure attachment with your dad, if that makes sense. So you can have one kind of attachment with one person and a different attachment outlook. It's not going to be dramatically different, but a different attachment outlook with another group of people. I think when you're really trying to figure out what your own attachment is, one of the best ways is to ask yourself, how do I view myself, positively or negatively? And how do I view other people, positively or negatively? Do you believe that other people are good intentioned? Do you believe that other people are likely out to get you or trick you or cheat you in some way? If you can answer those questions, then you can have a pretty good idea at figuring out where you are in terms of your primary adult attachment. Now, other times people will listen to my descriptions of attachment and then they think, well, I feel like I've fallen a few of those ideas, but I don't have all of those characteristics. So I can't be fully secure if I don't have all of those characteristics. My descriptions are descriptions of people who are very secure or very dismissive or very fearful avoidant or very anxious preoccupied. So you likely are not on the extreme ends of those two continuums that cross. In fact, as I've said before, and I'll say again, you likely have a primary attachment style, meaning that you have many or some of the characteristics of a person with one kind of attachment, and then you have a few characteristics of a person with another kind of attachment. That is normal, and that should be expected. The last thing that I wanted to talk about in this episode is compatibility. Oftentimes we figure out what our own attachment style is, our own adult attachment style, and we figure out what our partner's is, and then we wonder, well, they're not the same. Are we compatible? Can our relationship survive? Is it going to be healthy? Here's my research-based answer. The most compatible relationship, the relationship that is expected to be the most successful, is a secure person with a secure person. This should be no surprise to you. The second most compatible relationship, though, is a secure partner with any other kind of partner. So as long as one person has secure attachment, the other person could have any of the three insecure attachments, and the relationship can be quite compatible. You have to understand that many times when you have insecure attachment and you get in a relationship that is safe, that is secure, that is healthy, that has good communication, you start to add those experiences to your internal working models, and you can earn banked security. This is a real research term, banked security or earned security. So if you have anxious preoccupied attachment and you start dating someone who is secure, and the secure person is willing to do some attachment work with you to help you feel more safe and secure in your relationship, then you can earn banked security, and you can actually start to begin to view yourself, others, and the world in a more secure way. So the most compatible relationship is a secure person and another secure person. Duh. The second most compatible relationship is a secure person and any other kind of attachment. The third most compatible is a anxious preoccupied person and an anxious preoccupied person, or a dismissive person and a dismissive person, or a fearful avoidant person and a fearful avoidant person. So an insecure attachment that is the same. The reason that these could work is because, let's go with the example of the dismissive person and the dismissive person. These two individuals will both value each other's independence. They'll value their own independence. They won't feel this desire to get overly close and offend the other person who does not want to get overly close. They likely would be best friends who happen to also be in a relationship with one another. Are they going to have the same level of deep, rich intimacy that other couples have? Maybe not, but they're also going to be quite respectful of each other's needs for autonomy, and they could definitely be a successful relationship. Is it going to be harder than secure and secure? Of course, but it's not impossible. Same with an anxious preoccupied couple. Both people are going to want to be all over each other, with each other all the time, self-disclosing things about themselves, being consumed with each other at about the same rate probably. And so there's not going to be this push and pull back and forth. Fearful avoidant couple might have a little bit more trouble, but still there's going to be this kind of empathy and understanding for the other person's perspective that could make it helpful and could make a relationship be kind of healthy. Mind you, those relationships are not the most ideal relationships, but they're not the least. The least ideal relationship is an anxious person with an avoidant person. This is going to be very difficult. One person is always going to be chasing, the other person is always going to be running away. It becomes increasingly difficult as you get into a relationship that is like this, for you two to move forward. One person's always going to be wanting more, another person's always going to be wanting less. A lot of conflict can ensue, a lot of stonewalling can ensue, a lot of really negative communication patterns can ensue. Unfortunately, anxious people tend to be attracted to avoidant people, and sometimes avoidant people tend to be attracted to anxious people. So it's a very common, moderately destructive relationship pair. I hope that you understand a little bit more about your own attachment, and if you're in a relationship, the attachment of your partner. Thank you all so much for joining me for episode 6 of season 1 of the Love Matters podcast. If you're following along in the Attachment Matters digital workbook, this episode went over information from chapter 6. I hope you enjoyed the graphic showing how attachment develops from infancy to adulthood, and the chart showing how attachment anxiety and attachment avoidance combine to create 4 adult attachment styles. I'd like to give a special thanks to my contributors in this episode, Savannah, Bridgette, and Susie. Again, I am your host, Dr. Jenny Rosier, And as always, you can find me on Instagram at Relationships, Love, Happiness, on Facebook and YouTube by searching for the Relationships, Love, Happiness Project, and on the web at www.relationshipslovehappiness.com. I hope you'll join me for episode 7, where I really plan to get into a much deeper understanding of secure attachment. Thanks for listening.